Welcome to That Rugby podcast, hosted by the Rugby Booth. Your boy Luke Hughesy back again. Look, Series has been decided. Hughesy, controversy, not controversy, up to who you talk to. But let's start. I just want to start getting into the game and the ramble. Just what an absolute cinema that was for Australian rugby, for rugby in general, 90,000 people at the MCG. And what I'm considering one of the best games I've ever witnessed of rugby in my life. So, starting with that, the good notes.
I'll add on to the good notes as well. I'll add on to the good notes as well. I think the way that it ended, I think that's the only way Australia could have lost that. It's a positive, because now the entire nation is united behind hating the fucking Brits. And you know, that's how it should be. You know, all the newspaper articles, media posts, everything has been cheated, damned, fucking Poms ripping off Maro Itojo's head for trying to push Harry Wilson out in front of the way of the referee. We are now a nation united behind the Wallabies for this Test 3. If we were divided before, we are now united and stronger than ever. Much like Game 1, a tale of two halves, really. And we saw the immediate impact of Bobby Valentini. I mean, for a guy that is playing on one leg, what a series of carries. And Will Skelton as well. Right, that's going to be, you know, the even Etzebeth like rage holding Alan Alatoa. We've now got our version of Skilton, just one hand on a Tojo, another hand on another line, just keeping them at arm's length, laughing in their face. You know, clearly they weren't back at 100% because they were pulled at halftime. We could see that there was some. Obviously, they had to come off. I don't think either of them willingly came off. I think that was you know, got to conserve them. You know, like because we've got the Rugby Championship after this as well. As big as the British National Alliance Tour is, there's the long-term health of these players as well. And I think a part that's been underrated as well in this whole Test match is the fact that Harry Potter went off injured early in the game. And Tate McDermott had to play about 60 minutes on the wing. So not only did that then mean Jake Gordon played an entire 80-plus minutes at halfback, it also meant that Tom Liner played a whole game minutes at first time, and Ben Donaldson didn't see the field, because obviously they're wanting those halves pairings to stay together and to play together, right? I had to admit, I was surprised that Tate McDermott was the choice to go to the wing and not pushing Tom Wright to the wing and put Ben Donaldson in at fullback, because both have got experience in those different positions. But, you know, it is what it is. And look, for McDermott, it worked out. He had some great runs on the wing. He was shifty, fast. He was a little bit like Corey Toole-esque, I guess, in that way, you know, and he had some strong carries as well, running over people. Look, there are a couple of decisions in this game that obviously we've got to talk about, but I want to get to those at the end. I want to talk about the other aspects of this game. The Lions, what you can credit the Lions with when they weren't cheating was that they didn't get down. They stuck in the game, similar to Australia last week. They kept plugging it and kept going and going and going, and then they got the chocolates at the end of the day through controversial means, but they put themselves in a position to be able to get those chocolates through a couple of dodgy calls. And that's a credit to them and a credit to their coaching staff, right? Look, I think that sums it. I think in my mind that sums it up really well, is that, and it's something that we've maintained on this podcast, is that if you put yourself in a position to lose by a dodgy call, you haven't done enough to win the game. The flip side of that, which we don't often discuss, is usually we're on the side of getting screwed by the dodgy call, especially Wallabies, right? Is that in order to benefit from a dodgy call, you have to put yourself in a position to be competitive at that stage. You know, like you have to be able to win off the back of one dodgy call, right? And so often in rugby, it is that coin flip. So yeah, I thought the Lions, I mean, they're the cream of the crop of 4 tier 1 nations, right? I think Jack Morgan showed why he's got a place in the squad as well, despite that last call. And like, you know, even that last call is not. I don't think anyone's suggesting it's malicious from Jack Morgan, right? So I think he showed why he's got a spot on the squad and why he should retain that spot. But yeah, they played hard, and you know what? Similar to South Africa, they look at the rules and they bend them when they can. They push the limits, right? They push the limits because they know they can get away with it, right? So let's talk about the British and Irish Lions pushing the limits on a few different things here. So we'll go sort of chronologically, right? And the first one that comes to mind, obviously, is Sheehan's try, right? Diving over the top. And now this has been the subject of debate that even the great Nigel Owens has weighed in on, right? And said it is really a grey area that World Rugby needs to clear up, because there are two ways of looking at it. One, he's jumping over a tackler to avoid being tackled, and that's a penalty. The other view is that he's diving to score, in which case it is allowed, and he's also allowed to be tackled in the air. The thing is, though, in that situation, if you go to tackle him in the air, you need to have already been going high. So then if he then dives, your shoulder's going straight into his head. So you're never going to be in that position on the goal line to tackle him in the air, right? In that kind of situation. So, and as well, he wouldn't be in a position to score a try if he wasn't diving over a tackler. For my mind, even if you're looking at simply in terms of measurements, right? If you look against the square, if you look at the centimeters and meters of the play, right? The tackler is in front of the goal line, all right? The tackle would happen first before scoring the try. The tackler is physically in front of the goal line, right? Are we going to get to a stage where we could do, the South African lift play on the goal line? You lift someone up and they fall over the try line and then they're diving over, like NFL style jumping over the pile, right? Raises too many plays. I think World Rugby will come down on the side of like, it's fine. It's like you can't go back and change the result of a game, obviously, but in future, that is not what that law means. This is a guidance to how that law should properly be advised. I think opinions are very divided on that. And I can understand why it's a difficult call to make. So you can't really fault the referees for that one. It is one that is up to interpretation.
Double down on that.
But the fault lies with Sheehan for doing the act, right? For committing an act that is able to be penalized. And I think a lot of people have come out and said it's actually a really bad example for the game, particularly when we're worried about player safety, we're worried about head injuries, the biggest game of the year, the most watched rugby game in a long, long time. And this is what young kids are seeing is that. So when they go into their park footy games, when, some 33-year-old front row comes out of retirement to play a single game at front row, is he going to try pulling a Sheehan and jumping over the try line, gets paralyzed and then can't walk for the rest of his life? So I think that for me, I think that's the way World Rugby will come down and fix it, because I think they need to. It's dangerous. It's a bad example, and it's a very Americanized thing to do, and I think we don't want that in the game.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on this. As you said, I think it was ref really well in the moment. I was like, as soon as you did that, I was like, well, you can't dive over people. We've had that, like, we saw a Blair Murray situation like that over in Wales where all he did was jump. And I was like, you can't do that. But then, as he said, he's in the act of scoring a try. I was like, oh, that makes more sense. Like, I understand it at least. So it was communicated well. I was like, the decision at the time, totally agree. I also know that if you look at Sheehan, they had just previously taken a tap. He had gone straight down and he had noticed these players were going straight down. So as much as I agree with you, it's a dangerous play. I don't think it could have been penalised and stopped. Now I think it will be changed, as you've said. And B, it's eyes up 40 from Dan Sheehan. Again, I agree with you. Like, when I look at it, I go, fuck, if they had stayed upright, he could have been in some real trouble. But he knew they'd already done that, saw that they were already going low, and went eyes up 40 and scored the try. And I go, agree with everything you said. I don't think it sets a good example and everything like that. But in the, as you said, the most watched, most pressurised tests, those little things to be able to pull, like, I just sat there and I was like, holy fuck, like, he's obviously understood exactly what's going to happen, seen it, strategically thinking. Like, Sheehan is a fantastic player. Like,
he's a very good player.
Probably the best hooker in the world at the moment. And I go, it was a bit of everything kind of in that moment where I was confused. And again, I've played rugby all my life and I was like, you can't dive over people. But then I also, as soon as the ref explained you can do it as a try, I was like, well, I see that now. I get that. If he was a winger going for the corner, you put that into perspective. And I go, I don't know how you fix it. I don't know what rule dash you put in to fix it, but
if World Rugby don't change it, I think we'll see a lot more of it, because really it's an unwinnable, and I think that's why they will change it, because it was an unwinnable situation for Australia. So it was Slipper and Porecki there. If one of them had gone low and one of them had gone high and Sheehan had dived, if they'd not done what they'd done last time and gone really low, one of them stayed upright, they would have hit him in the head and they would have been penalised, right? Like, we could say as much as it is part of the rules that, if they're diving in the act of scoring, then they could be tackled in the air. That's all great to say in principle. In reality, that wouldn't have happened. It would have been a penalty and likely a card for the Wallabies. Let's be real on how these things are reffed and how the Wallabies are reffed. That's a card, right? That's a card 10 times. How this series has been reffed, who knows? Maybe it's not a card, but it's a card 10 times out of 10 when you're wearing Wallabies gold, right? Because you impacted the person's head. And how can a referee possibly know that he's diving to try and score a try? They can't rule that in the replay. They wouldn't. They way on the side of protecting player safety, which, again, it's not a bad thing, but it's an unwinnable situation for the defender. So if it's not addressed by World Rugby and this continues to remain in, I think we will see more of this until someone is injured, because it's just simply an unwinnable situation for the defensive side. You can't, either way you read it, you are going to get fucked. You're going to get a try scored on you, or you're going to get one of your players carded. So it needs addressing. And look, you have, as I said, I think Sheehan, it's a bad look for the game, but it's very smart to do what he did, because at the end of the day, all that matters to them in this moment is winning this test, and so that's what he did. He's not thinking about the other stuff I talked about. That's World Rugby's job to think about now, So now Sheehan did what he had to do on the night, and I don't hold compared to some of the other actions in the game, I don't hold think this was like poor sportsmanship or whatever. Let's move on to some other stuff that happened during the game. So one of the things that it's not really picked up on because it requires some technical scrum knowledge to be picked up on is the way that the Lions were scrummaging, where the front rowers, Porter and Genge, particularly in the second half, were angling in quite a bit and not being pinged notably when they're on Ben O'Keefe's side of the field. Now we've talked about O'Keefe last week and the poor job, just being frank, that he did not in one of those yellow cards, and the TMO as well didn't do a super great job as well. But this is one where, and Genge was also dropping his elbows down as well and pulling his opposing front rower down, and thus creating an unwinnable situation again, and the Wallabies were penalised for that and put the Lions in position to score tries, right? Now, this is one that these are cynical penalties, right? These are ones that, I do hold a bit more malice towards the players for, because they're manipulating the referees, right? They're manipulating the referees to do it. They're often doing it on the side where the referee isn't seeing it, but the side touchy is seeing it, and the touchy's focusing on a lot of other things as well. They're doing it in front of a ref as well, who they know was light on the whistle and on the whistle in their favour as well. And I think this was a very, very tactical move by the Lions to do this. It needs to be pinged. These are the situations where let me preface everything I'm about to say as well by saying the Wallabies fucked up, dropped the ball, and didn't play well, and absolutely they lost the game, as well as the Lions winning it. Don't get me wrong about that. The Wallabies should never have been in that situation after being up 23-5 to have the game able to be lost at the end of the game. So I'm not taking any responsibility away from the Wallabies. I'm not taking anything away about the poor performances that we saw, particularly in the second half. But that being said, coming back to where we just were, the referees also doing a poor job and need to be better. They need to be held more accountable. I do like the way, and I don't often make comparisons between the NRL and Rugby Union because I watch both of them, and I think they both do good things, and I both think they do things very, very badly. NRL does a lot of things badly. One thing I think they do well is how they manage their referees, where referees are benched for poor performance, where there is no guarantee that you are going to be reffing your next game. They're regularly reviewed. There's a coach of referees that continuously sits down, reviews performance, discusses it with those individual referees, and it creates a better standard of refereeing. Now, when I say better standard of referee, I'm not saying NRL is reffed perfectly or even reffed particularly well, but it is reffed to a more consistent standard than Rugby Union is. And that's because it's a domestic competition, so it's a lot easier to do, right? It's a lot easier to manage your referees that way. But there does need to be some review of referee performance, because it's not just in these games, it's in Super Rugby, it's in other international matches. It is something that is significantly affecting Rugby Union. When you have these headlines now coming out about these howlers of calls for Union, right? A game which is renowned for its respect of the referees, right? Of how players treat referees, how coaches respect referees. The reason for that is because of the professionalism of the game, as well with the culture of the game, but as well as the standard that we have of the referees. We expect them to be as professional towards the players as the players are towards the referees, right? It's a mutual respect type thing. Now, the non-calling of those penalties, I think, was poor. What I found extremely poor from the Lions and from the referee himself was Maro Itoje at the end of the game pushing Harry Wilson away from the referee, pushing the referee away from Harry Wilson, putting hands on them to break up Harry Wilson's request for a review. That, for me, is the low light of the game, right? We'll get onto the Morgan-Tizano call debate in a second. But that, for me, was really something that doesn't belong in this game, and Itoje should be censured for it, because that is disrespecting the opposing team's captain, who has done nothing but been respectful this entire series to the Lions, the referees, and rugby as a whole. Disrespectful to the referee himself by assuming that he doesn't know how to do his job and trying to remove another player, and disrespectful to the game of rugby and the standards that it represents. The fact that the referee then didn't tell Itoje to go away and let him do his job, as we have seen Nigel Owens, Wayne Barnes, Angus Gardner, great referees do in the past. For me, it was a failure on the part of the referee as well, and showed a lack of control and, to be honest, a bit of fear about making that game-changing call at the end of the game, right?
But he did send him away, did he not?
Not really, no.
I think he did. I think if you watch back,
I listened at the time.
Itoje, they came together, and then he said Itoje because he said we're going to deal with it. He said, "I've got this, Itoje." I remember him saying that. Maybe we probably had different broadcasts. I will say that because we're Sky over here in your stands.
Yeah,
it may have been completely different broadcasts, but like from the pickup I got, and was that he did send Itoje away, and that he was going to allow Wilson his moment in the sun.
Even if he said, "We've got this, Itoje," or "We've got this," that to me is not a strong enough response for the behaviour that was being shown. Right, from what we have seen from referees in the past for behaviour like that, and I'm not saying it should be a penalty. I'm literally talking about that his wording should have been stronger and how he spoke to Itoje, right, and what he was doing, because he definitely didn't speak up when Itoje was putting hands on Harry Wilson, right, and that's the point that he should have blown his whistle and told him to walk away and that he would deal with it. He didn't. He let it carry on until a point, and then he said we'll deal with it, and that's a very soft way to deal with it, regardless of the referee's actions in there as well. How Itoje acted is, we've seen criticism from the Australian media. Where's the criticism from the British media that supposedly has all these standards about rugby and how the game should be played and how people should act and things like that? Like that for me is to be honest, one of the worst acts I've seen on a rugby field. Like a lot of stuff you see with dangerous tackles and whatnot, you don't see that type of like thuggery like you would expect out of the NRL, right? That's what I thought I was seeing, was something out of the NRL or out of soccer. I don't know many times I've seen a player act like that towards another captain, putting hands and trying to push them away from a referee for a critical moment in the game like that.
Captains I need to rewatch this. I need to rewatch this because I do not have the same image as you in my head. Yeah. But again, from a neutral standpoint where I was more interested in what the end result was going to be, I need to rewatch that because I honestly thought, again, I do not remember the hands on him or anything, but again, I wasn't that focused on that moment because I was like, oh shit, there was. I remember seeing Tizano fall out the back before we get onto that incident, and I was like, oh, there could be something there, he could be something there, and then they all Harry Wilson's got every right to go up to the ref, Itoje's got every right to get into there as well, I think, because if Harry Wilson can go into and discuss with the ref, I think Itoje's got the same right to go and do it as well.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Again, I will have to go back and rewatch because I didn't see what you saw. Which,
he's very welcome to go up and chat to the referee, as captains do, and as we've seen that before in the past. The way in which he did it, though, where you're trying to stop the other captain from having that protest, where you're going up to him, game's over, pushing him away, like that's not on. That's not that's not what you do to a fellow captain, right?
I don't know. There was enough of that during the game. That's Harry Wilson called out that Itoje was doing schoolboy stuff at the start. I think there was enough between those two that, in my opinion, and again, I'll be happy if I go back and rewatch it and go, actually, that was Hughesy is right. That I think that the game was played on that type of emotion, and again, scouting getting involved. You saw the scuffles throughout the game. That I sit there and I go, I think there was enough respect there between both of them that they knew how important this game was, that the emotions were running high. That's the only thing I will say. And again, I haven't seen it the way you've seen it, which is, again, different because different viewpoints, different lenses. I'm seeing it as a All Blacks fan who really, as much as I wanted to see a third test decided, doesn't care as much as you will care. So, yeah, and that's probably why, again, as you've said, why they haven't seen the British media. Because if I haven't even seen it and I haven't got the lens of a New Zealander who doesn't care, they definitely won't be caring when they're holding up the trophy. Yeah, that's the only thing. It's a bit of a rebuttal to you, but again, I'm not in the same shoes that you feel.
And look, this has been the Australian media, particularly like other rugby podcasts and journalists and things like that have picked up on it. So maybe I'm getting extra feeds from there, and they're feeding into my emotions and creating it and fueling my fire. And look, we're human, right? This is how we're going to. We're not reporters. We are going to be biased. So anyone that comes in here thinking you're going to get an unbiased perspective, oh God, like this is definitely an Australian New Zealand based podcast, right? But let's talk about the Jack Morgan Tizano penalty at the end of the game, right? It is one of those ones that it's tough. It's tough. I mean, there's been debates back and forth, and even you yourself have had an internal debate and changed your opinion on it. For my mind, I always look at it as well as like, if the shoe was on the other foot, how would it be called, right? And we've seen this in so many other games. You provided an example yourself in video on the Rugby Booth social pages that this is a penalty, right? This is a penalty. And you asked the question of me on the night and also in the subsequent days. What is Jack Morgan supposed to do there? And this is something I think we've actually debated before, right? Because Carlo Tizzano got in there, got in low, and I think we actually had this debate literally in the Bundy Arki incident when this first came out. I think we had this exact same argument, and I had the exact same response, right? So what is Jack Morgan supposed to do there? Carlo Tizzano is in there. He's low. He's over the ball. Morgan can't possibly go any lower. As low as he can go, he's going to hit Tizzano in the head. And again, recognize this is bang, bang play, very, very quick timing, right? And you ask, what is Jack Morgan supposed to do there? At some point, you just lose the ruck. At some point, you have just lost the ruck, right? And that's that, right? And if you have to commit a penalty to win that ruck back, you've lost the ruck. You can't do, at some point, you just can't do anything legally, right? There's, just like chess, at some point, you're out of moves. At some points, it is checkmate. Right? Same thing in a ruck. At some point, you have lost the ruck and you can't do anything else. There is nothing Jack Morgan can do to win that ruck back legally, right? And that, I think, that's my opinion of that play, is that Tizzano got there, he won the ruck. And for all the people saying, oh, shit, he came in from the side, this, that, and the other, we've seen examples literally last week from South Africa where they came in from the side, and the response we were given from the referees and from South African rugby Twitter is that it's not a ruck until two players are there, so you can come in at that angle, right? So that's a legal play. The way Tizzano entered the ruck is a legal play, right? Let's stop that right there. Particularly Jamie Roberts, the fucking center, trying to school Michael Hooper on how to properly ruck. Like, fuck off. That to me was absolutely ridiculous. One of the greatest sevens to ever play the game, and you're trying to tell him how to properly ruck and jackal. That's just ridiculous. But yeah. For my mind, Tizzano got there. He won the ruck legally. He had hands on the ball. At some point, you just lose the ruck. At some point, that's why we have the penalty. That's why we have the penalty for not releasing, is because at some point you've just lost the ruck. The other team has made the play, right? And so it should have been a penalty. It wasn't a penalty. That's not the way they ruled it. And that I have a real issue with in how the TMO has been in this game, in the last game, because in the last game, right, we had 3 calls that we said could have been yellow cards. One of them, Ben O'Keefe unilaterally ruled on the field, was not a yellow. And as much as we have issue with that decision, at least it's the referee on the field making a call, right? And just going with it, right? Which is something we've said we want to see more of. So as angry as I was at Ben O'Keefe, I even said in last week's podcast that I actually was more angry at the TMO, and he was all right. The TMO then had 2 calls that they reviewed last week that should have been cards that weren't cards, which is ridiculous. And it's again, this week, there's a call that should have been a penalty that wasn't a penalty, right? It's a real issue. And even now, the fucking newspapers are talking about it. When the media in Australia is paying attention to rugby union and stuff that goes on in rugby union games, it's got to be a pretty major issue, right? For Australian media to actually pay attention to it, it's a pretty big deal. It was a crazy way to end the game. And, a lot of people might say it ruined the game. I don't think it ruined the game. I think you're absolutely spot on. It was a fantastic test match. And as I said at the top of the podcast, I don't think it ruined the test. I think if anything, it united everyone behind the Wallabies. And there's nothing Australians love more than an underdog story when we're getting screwed over, right? And this is exactly what we've got here now. So now everyone in Australia can get behind the Wallabies, and I'll talk about that a bit more when we talk about Game 3.
Yeah. The last thing I'm going to say on this incident, because I've flip-flopped in my head, I've watched the incident about 1,000 billion times now. By the letter of the law, I think it's a penalty, and that's where my video came out, and I said I think it's a penalty. By the letter of the law, there's head or neck contact. Therefore, is there foul play? Yes. Doesn't matter. As far as I'm concerned, as soon as there's any head or neck contact, there's foul play. Now, there's 2 ways I see this. As we've kind of said, they didn't come at the same time, which the ref explained. I still think the ref reffed it extremely well in the moment, communicated what he saw. And again, this is what I love about union refs and what I think make the best refs. We see Angus Gardner all the time. Communication skill set. As long as you communicate what you're seeing, he did it with the Sheehan try. He did it with the end of the game play there. He felt that they arrived at the same time, so it wasn't a penalty. My thing is, I don't think they arrive at the same time, which, hey, again, pressure moment, 90,000 people all watching a screen. Yeah. He's made his decision. Morgan arrives a split second later. The mitigation then there is he has nothing that he can do to change where he's going or anything. It's like a high tackle, and then they drop at the last minute, and then there's the mitigation because it's a last second drop or change. There's mitigation there. It's penalty, maybe not even a yellow card because it's hit. below the chin or whatever. The other thing I think as well, and this might be controversial, that call was actually for the good of rugby. And I say that not because it screwed you guys over. Again, this call is what World Rugby needs to look at, because that is a 50-50 call in my opinion. Like, again, as I've flip-flopped, as everyone's discussing it, if you're on your side as a Wallaby fan, you'll feel aggrieved. If you're on the British and Irish line side and it was a penalty, you'd feel aggrieved. If it was the All Blacks versus South Africa, any team in the world, it's so 50-50 that a team's going to end up in the wrong thing. This is World Rugby for us at the moment, which as I said, I think when we discussed the Bundyaki one, that position is the most dangerous position other than contesting a high ball in World Rugby at the moment. Head-high contact, shoulder-to-head contact, so well understood. As soon as you make contact with the head, this is hard because, like as I've said, what's Joe Morgan getting to do? You've said you have to lose the ruck at some point. Again, as a rugby player who's been taught for 20 years how to clean out that ruck, I go, how do we change this so in future iterations that this isn't a problem? And that's where I sit there. I think by the letter of law, it's a penalty. The way the ref reffed it, I have no problem with it. Again, from my lens of, I didn't lose a series. You've lost the series. I totally understand why all of Australia would be angry. And then I go, letter of the law penalty. Australia ref reffed it well. For the good of the game, I like that it wasn't a penalty. Like, I don't know how we change this so that isn't a penalty, because I don't think that should be a penalty going forward. Like, he's come in as low as possible at the last split-second incident. Like, there was a whole lot I watched on the World Rugby website where they've got the laws, a lot of examples of penalties and red cards, and a lot of them they've come in slightly after. So, like, let's say a half a second. This is 0.1 seconds we're talking about with Jack Morgan. I think that's where the argument can be made, that they are there at such a tight time. That's why the ref made that decision, and so on and so forth. I think if they're not there at the same time or anything like that, or they're not there 0.1 seconds, say that's 0.5 seconds and he's come in and hit that position, I think that's a penalty. And so that's where I'm starting to see the grey line in this whole matter, is head contact should be a penalty, but grey line is the fact that they're so close at coming together.
It's as well, like when you say you like how the referee refed it, obviously, like, I don't agree with the decision. However, I agree that the technical way in which the referee refed it was correct. Like, unlike the TMO in the previous weeks where it was a clear, just wrong call in terms of how they've applied the laws, this was an application of law where at several points in applying the law, the referee needs to make a judgment call, and the referee made a judgment call. It wasn't a misapplication of the laws as we'd seen last week, right? So yeah, I agree with that part of it. I disagree with the judgment of the referee, and that's going to happen. It is going to happen. But I'm sure I and the rest of Australian rugby fan, Wallaby rugby fans, and Rugby Australia, because they've asked for clarification on this, would feel aggrieved because these calls so often go against the Wallabies to the point that it's becoming ridiculous now. That the call
is the MCG a hoodoo now. The last time I remember time wasting. Now this,
it's just there's, but not just the time wasting, but things like this ruck call. You know, like such similar situations go against the Wallabies, and it's just to the point that it is taken away enjoyment of the game because it feels like the Wallabies are always fighting an uphill battle. You know, that it's always competing against the referee. And I don't know where this reputation's come from and that why the referees feel the way that they do. That's why I do like Harry Wilson as captain, because of that seemingly better relationship with the referees that he has. Even someone like Michael Hooper, like an incredibly respectful, articulate person, seemed to at times have a less than ideal relationship with the referees. But Wilson, for whatever reason, seems to have that down better. And I think that's he's solidified his place as a captain in this series as well. So and the trial match against Fiji. So yeah, it is really tough to swallow as a Wallabies fan watching that and knowing that if the shoe was on the other foot, the call would be the other way. That all being said, I'm going to reiterate my point that I said before, just so that no one's in any doubt. Right, the Wallabies absolutely lost this game. Absolutely did not do enough to win this game after a fantastic first half. And I recognize, and that actually, to be quite honest as well, comes down to coaching, right? We've often been very praiseful of Joe Schmidt. I think this was not one of his best coaching games in terms of the personnel selection for the game, right? If we go back, let me pull, I should remember off the top of my head, but Wallaby squad was Slipper, Parecki, Alatoa. Second row, we had Frost and Skelton. Bobby V, Harry Wilson, Fraser McWright, Jake Gordon, Tom Liner, Jorgensen, Ikitau, Suoli'i, Potter, Tom Wright. Then on the bench is, here we go, Billy Pollard, Angus Bell, Tom Robertson, Jeremy Williams, Angie Gleeson, Paolo Tizzano, Tate McDermott, Ben Donaldson. So he went for a 6-2 bench split. Now, for me, I think that 6-2 bench split was a mistake. I think that was a mistake. Having both Gleeson and Tizzano, I understand the thinking behind it, right? That Bobby V is not going to play a full game. He's hurt. So we need Gleeson to take in that Bobby V role. As much as I like Carlo Tizzano, it's not necessary for him to be on the field. McWright is necessary. It's not necessary. You're going for a 6-2 bench split in a game like this. Just for me, I was a bit wary of it when I saw the team announced. But then there's other parts of the selections I didn't like as well. And maybe this could have worked if some other selections were different, right? Jeremy Williams was a mistake to be in the team again. That should have been Lukan Salakaia-Loto. I don't know what more this player can do to earn himself a Wallabies spot in this tour, in these test matches. If he's not in the third test, I will be flabbergasted, right? He's had impactful carries. He's had great line-out work. He's scrummaged well, right? I don't know what hold has Jeremy Williams got over Joe Schmidt that he feels like he needs to keep him in the squad. I really, really didn't understand that part of it as well. The second part I didn't understand was then not only swapping Skelton and Valentini at halftime, but also replacing your entire front row at halftime, right? The week before we didn't do that, and it worked out well. It meant Robertson and Bell were fresh the entire second half. The Lions front row wasn't brought on later than them, so they didn't have like a real advantage at scrum time and things like that. We saw the effect of that fatigue on them both towards the end of the game, with the Lions were just dominating at scrum time. I mean, they were angling in as well, but you could see the fatigue on Bell and Robertson. Like I didn't understand that at all. Look, with the bench as well, you could also say, as much as I say Carlo Tizzano is not necessary, neither was Langy Gleeson, right? You could have swapped either of them, had either of them in that bench position, right? And in fact, I would have preferred Tizzano to be there. Like Tizzano could play 6. He's got a big enough body. And then you have him and McWright on the field at the same time as well. Like, and Gleeson had a good game. Like, I'm talking about this as if I was looking at it before the game as well, right? So
what would you have changed? You brought in an extra back. Because what I was literally about to say, I would have gone 7-1. They didn't even use Donaldson. If they knew McDermott was going to be their backup winger, why didn't they go 7-1? And go full out with it if they, injury, you can say there, but they didn't use Donaldson. And they lost a winger 20 minutes into the game.
And that's the next part I'm going to bring up as well, is why not use Donaldson? Is why not have Donaldson at fullback and right on the wing as well? Like, that way you've got Donaldson on there who's a good kicker as well, who's got a great boot from back at 15 to get you some more meters that way, who's really savvy about the game as a 10 as well. Like, think about that kickoff, right, that Finn Russell did when none of the back three were back. McDermott is regularly a 9, so he sort of gets a pass there in not being back. But what were Jorgensen and Wright doing? Particularly, what was Tom Wright doing? Like, you're a fullback. Be back there, right? I don't remember if that's after the try he scored or not as well. But look, for me, like, I don't see why he wouldn't bring Donaldson on there and have Wright on a wing. And then that way you also have jumping ability on that wing as well. Then you can have as well Jake Gordon replaced by Tate McDermott at some point as well. And Tate is more dangerous darting around the ruck, as we know, right? And Jake Gordon had a good game, but definitely was much more impactful the first half than the second half as well. I think it was a bit of mismanagement all around. How I would have structured the bench, right? And I think you might have asked me the squad, right? So what I think I said last week, I'll go by what I said last week, and then I'll do, looking now in hindsight, what I would have done, right? So last week, what I would have done is kept the front row the same. So Pollard, Bell, Robertson. Then second row, Lukan Salakaia-Loto, Carlo Tizzano on the bench. Then McDermott, Donaldson, and another back. Well, first off, I would have replaced Peach with Potter. Peach on the wing, Potter not in the game at all. But I would have had someone back there. I don't even know who's in the wider Wallaby squad, because I think Dangunu got injured, so he was ineligible to play. Maybe that had a role in it as well. But I would have had another back there. Maybe Josh Fluke, who's with the team at the moment. Just another player to cover that back position. If I'm looking at it now, right? If I'm looking at it Or Andrew Kellaway. Of course Andrew Kellaway isn't scored. It could have Andrew Kellaway back there, right? Looking at it now, and what we know happened in the game, I would have said, actually, instead of Tom Robertson, Taniela Tupou. I think he's going to be playing this week anyway because Alan Alatoa is injured, right? I would have had Tupou in there to have, and I wouldn't have subbed out the forwards at the front row at the halfway mark, right? Because as much as fatigue as Tupou would have had from the First Nation Pacifica game, you get him to play a solid 25, 30 minutes, right, of rugby. He's capable of that. And he's very good at scrum time. We saw how good he was at scrum time in that First Nations Pacifica game. So we would have gone Pollard, Bell, and Tupou, Lukan Salakaia-Loto, and I'm really split on Gleeson and Tizano here, to be honest. I would say that the other three would be the same, McDermott, Donaldson, Kellaway. Gleeson did really well in the ball carrying department. However, I think if I have Lukan Salakaia-Loto and Taniela Tupou in there, I don't bring in Gleeson. I put Tizano there as well.
Fair enough.
In place, and then bring Tizano on at 6, right? You could also, and Salakaia-Loto can also play that 6 role as well. If you feel like Skelton's having enough of a game that he can last longer. I don't think he could have, but you get that coverage with Salakaia-Loto as well. So yeah, I have to say, just looking at it now, and even before the game, I was a little bit like, not sure about the 6-2 split. No, I'm not sure how's it going to work. What I figured it was Donaldson could cover fullback and Wright can cover wing if it comes to it. And someone can always cover center. You can always find someone to cover center, right? So I agree with you that I'm very curious about why Donaldson wasn't used at all. And I don't think we have a sufficient answer for that yet. Even if it's just to spell liner, right? Jake Gordon and Ben Donaldson have played together before. They played together for years at the Waratahs, right? So it's not like it's an unknown halves pairing. And I think it's a lot of pressure on Liner. And to be honest, Liner, as brave as he is in defense and as much as he stands up to tackles, he's a littler guy. He's a smaller guy than Donaldson, who can be taken advantage of in those situations. Donaldson's a bit more of a solid frame. It's just little things like that make me scratch my head a bit and like, what was Schmidt thinking in this one?
Game 3 though, mate. What are we looking at? What are you thinking? Again,
Game 3.
Series lost, but you don't want the sweets. No dead rubber in a Lions series.
Yeah. Now I want all Wallabies fans and the Wallabies to listen closely to me here. This is not the first time we've been in this situation. This is not the first time. And it's really the history of Australia where we find ourselves right now. Screwed over by colonial powers from Europe, put in an unwinnable, untenable situation, backs against the wall, everyone telling us we can't do it, everyone telling us we've already lost, there's no point, what's the point, who cares, it's not worth it. This is where Australia was founded. This is where the spirit of this nation was forged, right? When the Brits dumped us on the beach at Gallipoli, at Anzac Cove, and we were mown down in machine gun fire, when we couldn't win, we were put into a pit. What did we do? Did we run and hide? No, we fought on, right? When the light cavalry was ordered to charge at Beersheba into the guns of the Turks, did we shy away? No. We rode our horses into glory. Ordered to charge across the neck and massacred. Did we run away? No. We ran forward. Right? When the miners of Company 60 were ordered to construct the largest mine the world has ever seen beneath the hill at Messines in Belgium, beneath the ears of the Germans, by British overlords who couldn't care less if those poor miners died or not, did we back off? No, we did it, right? This is the Australian spirit right here, being put into situations by a foreign overlord who cares not one jot about us and put in an unwinnable situation and told that go forward. Right? Go forward. And that's what Australia will do. And that's what the Wallabies are going to do this game. That's what they need to do this game, right? You know, we can't win the series. It's done. It's lost, right? Everything I've just described is the same. It's already lost. It's already done. It's already a failure, right? But Australians don't quit. The Anzacs didn't quit, and the Wallabies are not going to quit in Game 3. And that's what I'm looking for in this game. That's what I think will fire the Wallabies up. Is knowing now that 2 games in a row, they have been screwed and fucked over by Brits and French and Italian people from Europe, foreign imperial powers have fucked Australians once again, right? And I think that if that doesn't get your blood absolutely fucking boiling, the people that have the audacity to put mashed peas and beans on toast and call it gourmet food have fucked us over once more. If that doesn't get your blood boiling, I don't know what will, all right? And that's what the Wallabies are taking into this game, is the knowledge that they have been fucked. They have been screwed over. They have been put in a situation where they cannot win, where they've been told that nobody believes in you, that nobody cares, when fucking shitty haircut Henry Pollock is like, oh yeah, 3-0s on the card's easy, mate. You know, I hope he plays this week so someone puts an elbow into his fucking face. Like, that's the attitude I'm looking for this week from the Wallabies, right? And that's what I'm looking for from this game. We saw it from Bobby Valentini in game 2, absolutely blasting through lily-livered fucking Englishmen left, right, and center, right? That's what I'm looking for the Wallabies this weekend.
Love it. Yeah. I'm not even going to ask for a score prediction because I think we obviously know it's the Wallabies and it doesn't really matter what the score's going to be. You just need a win.
Mm-hmm.
We'll leave it at that. That was fantastic, honestly. Yeah. Best of luck, mate. Look, I'm in your corner, although it doesn't affect me and won't affect my mental state or ability. I know it will affect all of Australia and yours, so I'm hopeful for you. But
I've got some homework for you. I want you, when you watch the game this week and thinking about the last 2 games that you've seen the Wallabies play, think about, I want your thoughts on how that will affect the Wallabies going into the Rugby Championship and what it will do for the Wallabies there, because I think it's been a boost for them, to be honest.
Yeah, I already said when you were 23-5 up, did I feel a little tingle in my nuts? Yeah, I did. I was like, fuck, they're playing some fucking good rugby against some really good opponents. I was like, did I go and check and make sure the Bledisloe Cup was locked away? I did. I definitely did. I was a bit nervous, but I will. This game, I mean, will... Because it's easy to do on a do-or-die match. How you come out on a dead rubber against a team that's as arrogant as the Lions, this will show some face. So I will report back to you next week. Don't you worry about that, mate.
I've already said Australians are at our best when people say that we can't win and there's no point, right? And we're in a hopeless cause. We're the kings of lost causes.
That you are. That's been us for another week. Make sure we are back. You join us again next week. My name's Luke. That's Husey. We'll see you later. Goodbye.
Peace.